Welcome back to Ken Bostrom Ministries television broadcast. We thank you for being with us, and we want to give a special shout out and a thank you to our partners who make it possible for us to be able to do this and bring this message to 195 nations that watch this. And so we're very thankful for that. Last week, at the last program, I shared about the signs in the heavens. Just kind of overview of the last couple of years, going back to 2017. This 2017 was a major pivotal part. It was like a shift. It was a turning point. It was like the rabbi said after that 10th Jubilee, that Messianic times would begin. And I believe there's so many signs about the coming of the Lord. And today we're going to look back at signs on the earth. Signs on the earth, we're not just going to talk about in the earth itself, but with nations and things that are happening in Israel. So I have a lot to share today. So just hold on to your chair. We're going to get going here. Matthew 24, 7 through 8. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, sorrows is the word odin in Greek, and it means birth pains. Birth pains. Now, I've had 3 children. I have 2 living, and I know what a birth pain is. And I just said, give me some drugs. Just give me a shot. I mean, birth pains is absolutely unbearable. Women die in childbirth. And it's before the Lord returns, the earth is going to have birth pains. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, well, Mary, there's always been famines. There's always been earthquakes. There's always been some of these things. But let me tell you, in the Word of God, I don't have this on the PowerPoint, but there's 8 prophecies that had to be fulfilled before Jesus could come. And up to 1948, not one of them had been fulfilled. Now, I've had this PowerPoint in several different programs, but I'm just going to go over them quickly because in the 70 years between 1948 and 2018, in those 70 years, all of those 8 have been fulfilled. So, before 1948, there wasn't a whole lot of prophecy teachers because it looked like impossible for there to be Israel would come back. But one of the prophecies was Israel would be restored as a nation in one day. And that looked like an impossibility. But when 1948 came, there was a lot of preachers that started rising up and started preaching end time events. Well, here we are 70 years later, and a lot of preachers have not, they won't even touch end time events with the 10-foot pole because people are tired of waiting, they're tired of hearing. But this is when, those scoffers, and these are the times that we need to start preparing ourselves to meet the Lord more than ever. First one is Israel will be restored in a day. The second one is the land will begin to bloom and be fruitful. Mark Twain had visited Israel in the early 1900s, I think, and he wrote back, nothing can survive over there. It was like nothing could live over there. Nothing could grow over there because it was rocks and desert and nothing green. And that happened. And water would break out in desert for irrigation. That happened. In the desert down in South Israel, in the Negev and the Arabah, that was a total desert area. But David Ben-Gurion was after he resigned as prime minister, he went and he wanted to see that fulfilled, that the desert would bloom, and he started trying to think of ways. An American satellite went over the top of Israel, and they saw a huge water reserve down underneath where he was, down in southern Israel. And they started the irrigation system. And now there are 54 flourishing farms in a place that used to be desert wasteland with nothing but sand. Israel would be in the hands in the hands of the Jews and expand its border. That happened in 1967. The Jews from Gentile nations would return back to Israel. That happened continually from 1948. The early and latter rains would return in the last days. That happened in the 90s. The walls of Jerusalem would be rebuilt by strangers, and the gate would be open continually. Jerusalem would become a burdensome stone. Now that happened actually after President Trump announced that he was moving his embassy, and that the United States recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That caused the nations it burdened the nations. Which way am I going to stand here? And several nations have chosen to follow the United States now, and move their embassy to Jerusalem, which causes them to be a sheep nation and not a goat nation. Romans 8:21 through 22. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. There has always been weather patterns that are weird, and earthquakes, always been earthquakes. There's always been volcanoes. There's always been famines. There's always been floods. But now they're going to be more bizarre. They're going to be in weirder places. The United States has never had so many earthquakes as it has had. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. But there's going to be increased weather patterns. There's going to be more volcanic eruptions. Tsunamis will increase. When that tsunami happened in Indonesia, nobody knew. I'm serious. I didn't know anybody that understood what a tsunami was. And I was sitting in Marshall, Minnesota with my mother, who was in the hospital, and we were looking at that screen and we're saying, what in the world is happening? We'd never seen anything like that in our life because we'd never seen a tsunami. And now there's tsunami warnings all the time. Because when there's an earthquake out in the sea, then it causes the water to, tsunami to come in. And you're going to see more of those. Isaiah describes what the end times are going to be before the coming of the Lord. Isaiah 13, 6 through 8. Wail, for the day of the Lord is at hand. The day of the Lord is going to be the tribulation period. God is long-suffering. God is long-suffering. But there is a time when he stands up and says, enough is enough, and the day of the Lord is at hand. There is a period of payback. There is a due time and a due season for judgment to come. You're going to say, whoa, God, wait a minute, Miss Mary. God is a God of mercy. Yes, but God in his mercy has to judge. God in his mercy has to judge. He could not continually let this go. And there is a time and there's a season. Angel Gabriel showed it to Daniel about the 70 weeks. 69 weeks have weeks of years, have 483 years have been fulfilled exactly like the angel Gabriel showed him. But then there's going to be the last week, and that last week has to do with Antichrist and the tribulation. Not many preachers are preaching that anymore. People are afraid to preach about the Antichrist. Nobody even talks about the rapture anymore. I am not ashamed of the Word of God. The rapture is going to come. I understand the Jewish wedding. I understand the seven days of the Jewish wedding. Everything to do with Rosh Hashanah and the coming of the Lord for his people, lifting them up and taking them away for the marriage supper, that all has to do with the coming of the Lord. He's going to take us out. We have not been given to wrath. The end time, that 7-year tribulation, is going to be the wrath of God fulfilled. And we have not been given to that. So don't tell me we're going to be here for it, because if you want to stay, fine. I'm not. Okay, let's go back, because the earth is going to have pangs, and sorrows will take hold of them, and they'll be as pain as a woman in childbirth. They will be amazed at one another, and their faces are going to be like flames. The travail carries a connotation of entering into the labor with fear and trembling. There is going to be great labor pains upon this earth. This just happened on 11/11 of this year. I'm just finishing off 2018, and I got this from several different stories, but I like National Geographic story report on it. On the morning of 11/11/18, just before 9:30 UT, a mysterious rumble rolled around the earth. A seismic wave. Seismic has to do with earthquake. A seismic waves began roughly 15 miles off the shores of Mayotte. Now, Mayotte is called the Island of Death, and it is between Madagascar and South Africa. They traversed vast oceans, humming across Chile, New Zealand, Canada, and even Hawaii, nearly 11,000 miles away, lasting 20 minutes. It was not heard by humans, but it was picked up on a seismograph earthquake readings. A seismologist at Columbia University says, "I don't think I've ever seen anything like it." See, people couldn't hear it, but the earth was absolutely groaning, and that groaning was on 11/11. Now, at my Bible study the other day, I said, who continually sees or very frequently will all of a sudden turn her head and look at a clock and it's 11/11? And there was so many hands raised up, and everybody was wondering, what does this mean? I keep seeing 11/11 all the time. And there's a few things here I want to point out about 11/11 here. I can find it. So many papers. 11 is a number of transition. In Deuteronomy 11:11, it's a transition from the new place into your promised land. Luke 11:11, this is where Jesus releases the revelation of Father God, that he's a gift giver. They had known God as, you never know what God is going to do. God may kill us, and they blamed everything on God because there was no sense God could talking to them about the devil, because they had no authority over the devil. And so they blamed everything on God. Like Job says, well, the Lord gives, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And they believe God for everything. But here, Jesus gives them a fresh revelation on John 11:11 that God is a gift giver, and he's their Father. And he's a good Father. Oh, that was new to them. That absolutely blew the Jewish people away. John 11:11, this is where Lazarus, his friend, had fallen asleep, but he was going to raise him up after 3 days. In Judaism, they believed that a person really isn't dead until they've been dead for 3 days, because they believe that they can come back, and after it's been 3 days, that after 3 days that if they're dead, they're really dead. And so there's a lot of intercessors that have fallen asleep. They're like, their prayer life is absolutely dead. But let me tell you, we're coming to a time, a wake-up call, where God wants to wake up these intercessors. Proverbs 11:11, by the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted. It's going to be shifting one way or another, and it's up to us. Hebrews 11:11, Sarah received her promise. She got a child. Tells about it in Hebrews 11:11. So 11:11 really is a shift verse. Matthew 26, about the 11th hour, 5 p.m., he went out and found others standing idle and said to them, "Why have you been standing here idle all day?" So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, Call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning from the first to the last. Well, when they saw what the last person had got, they really, the first people really expected, oh man, if he got that and he's on the last hour, just think what we're going to get. You know what? The last hour people don't have to work so hard because we are standing on the shoulders of all those that have gone. Smith Wigglesworth, Kenneth Hagin, so many great men of God that we're standing on their shoulders. They had to work hard. Guess what? We just get to reap the harvest. We are the last hour laborers. The 11th hour is the last hour before the workday is over. And so 11th hour people really have, it's a great place. And like I said, I have so many notes here. The 11th hour Christians. We are going to have amazing things. We're going to have a great success. We are going to be the 11th hour people. It is 11 is a number of transition. As it often says, the 11th hour comes right before the start of a new day. It's a time of preparation. New assignments are going to be handed out this next year. 11 is like a birth canal. The baby is going from the comfort of the womb into the stress and discomfort of born in a new large life. There's some things that 11:11. If you're watching now, we are in the 11th hour. We are absolutely in the 11th hour. Now, there's a lot of things that are happening on this earth. One of them is earthquakes. Anchorage, Alaska, or Alaska around that area, had a 7.0 magnitude earthquake on November 30th. Now, as I'm filming this today, it's December 20th, and they have had over 5,000 earthquakes every single day. They have earthquakes, and it's like 3 or 4. Some of them had been very, very severe. But it's been constant earthquakes. There's so many earthquakes this year. Now, the largest one with the death toll was in Indonesia, and that was a 7.5. And 2,256 people died from that earthquake. The largest magnitude was Fiji. That was 8.2. And the seismologists called it a moderate. It was an 8.2, and it was moderate because it happened in a place that didn't have so many people. Alaska, 7.9 on January 23rd. Now, why was the 7.5, 7.0 so violent in Alaska in December when January it had a 7.9? It was almost an 8-point earthquake. Because it happened off the shores. And so they had tsunami warnings going on. Indonesia, 7.5. There's just a lot of things, and they called that one a violent one. And so those are largest of magnitude. Here's the ring of fire that you really have to watch, this ring of fire. And this is all over around the Pacific Ocean here. The plates there, they have a lot of shake, rattle, and roll in that area, let me tell you. But if you look, some of the largest cities with that handle money come from those areas, and these could cause a great devastation. If you look, we had state of Washington there. You have California. In the United States, if there is the major earthquake in that area, that absolutely could really hurt our economy. It could really devastate it if it was a massive earthquake. They keep expecting the big one. A lot of places where they're not expecting the big one are in the middle of the United States. There's a fault line down in the middle of the United States that goes through Arkansas and Missouri and different places like that, all the way down. And that has been prophesied that if we if we take if we cause Israel to have to divide their land, that will be split in two. Another one is the supervolcano that's underneath Yellowstone. That when that erupts, it will cause so much ash to go out that it will cause all the farmlands to be devastated up in the Middle East, and that's where the breadbasket is, up in the middle of America, and that's where the breadbasket is. But these are the areas right here where have the biggest fault line. But check at the United States, because the United States constantly will have the weirdest earthquakes in the weirdest places that have never had one before. There is so much shaking going on right now. We had the huge volcano eruption in Hawaii that did a lot of damage. There's a lot of things to watch out for. May 14th, one of the shakeups that were in the natural that shook the nations was May 14th, 2018, was the 70th anniversary of the birth of Israel, when Israel became a nation in a day in 1948. And this is the date that President Trump chose to open the new embassy in Jerusalem. And here we see that was a great celebration, major celebration. Here you see Ivanka Trump at the celebration. It was a great day. Now, that really started the moving of a lot of things prophetically in the end time. I have both of these coins. They're Third Temple coins. The coins are available from Israel, and they're for the Third Temple. In both of these coins, you see the profile of Cyrus with in front of him the profile of President Donald Trump. These were not made in the United States. These were not made by Republicans in the United States. These were made by the Temple Institutes for the Third Temple. When I bought the first one, it just fascinated me. I just had to carry it with me all the time and show it to people. Look at it, hold it, look at everything on it. Because Cyrus was the one that allowed the Jews to come back from Babylon and rebuild the temple after 70 years. And they say that Donald Trump in Israel, the kosher people in Israel, the Orthodox people in Israel, they call him a second Cyrus, because after 70 years, he's starting to bring order back into Jerusalem and say it's their capital, and they want to rebuild the third temple. They want to build the third temple. The first temple was Solomon, and that was destroyed, and that was totally in rubbles. And so after Cyrus decreed that they could rebuild, and he actually used it with his own wealth to help them rebuild it. And Ezra went back, and Zerubbabel went back, and Nehemiah went back and rebuilt the temple, and they rebuilt the walls. And they say, and if you look at the gold one here, you probably can't see it very well. It says to fulfill 70 years. These are the Jewish people in Israel that say this. There was a third temple altar dedication this year on December 10th, 2018. It was the last day of the Feast of Hanukkah. Hanukkah means dedication. 70 nations were invited. The altar was 4.5 tons, and the ramp was 2 tons. And they moved it over by the outside of the wall of the Old Jerusalem. And it was the first altar to be lit in 2,000 years. It was the first temple stone altar in 2,000 years. It was the first high priest of Israel to be elected in 2,000 years. They had trained priests, descendants of Aaron, the original priest, were prepared and ready. They blew the silver trumpets that they have ready for the third temple. All things are ready for the third temple. The menorah is ready. The table of showbreads are ready. And here's some. They had. They didn't do the sacrifice right there. They had butchered the lamb, and they had sacrificed the front legs of the lamb on that altar. And here's some pictures. This altar was huge. You can see they're outside, and they're building the fire right here for the first time in 2,000 years. That's in my time. These are the last of the last days. And here you see the priests with the trumpets. All the priest garments are all ready. Everything is ready. And every time I tell people about this, they say, "What, is there a perfect red heifer?" There is a perfect red heifer. It was born in August 2018. It has no blemish and no spot on it. Every single hair on that heifer, and they're watching it, every single hair is perfect red. From the time of Moses, there has only been 9 perfect heifers have been prepared. According to Jewish tradition, there will only be 10 red heifers in human history, with the 10th heifer ushering in the Messianic era. I hope you're getting excited about this. And some of you think, well, what has a red heifer to do? I encourage you to go read Hebrews 19. Speak to the children of Israel, for they will bring you a red heifer without blemish, in which there is no defect, and with the yoke has never come. They have to have the ashes of the red heifer to dedicate the third temple. Now, this altar dedication was to dedicate the sacrifice altar. But let me tell you, there are signs in the people in these last days. In the last days, perilous times will come, dangerous, treacherous, violent, hard to bear. And men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure, lovers of God. I beg you, from these kind of people, turn away. Turn to the Lord. He loves you, and He has a plan for you. He wants you to come close to Him in these last days. God bless you.